What if I told you that the biggest limits on your success are not external? They're the stories that you're telling yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. You're not your business. You're not your level of success. You're not the revenue numbers that you're experiencing. You're not even your past track record. Those are just past accomplishments. You're the one who is aware of those experiences. You're not defined by them. When you realize that you're not defined by your experiences, then you realize that failure is just feedback rather than a personal identity crisis. And you stop riding those emotional highs and lows and you start leading from a stable sense of self. Welcome back to the Daily Mastermind. George Wright III with your daily dose of inspiration, motivation, and education. Let me ask you a question. What if I told you that the biggest limits on your success are not external? They're the stories that you're telling yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. Your identity isn't fixed. It's just a thought. And it's part of this idea that I'm talking to you about yesterday, today, and tomorrow around your thoughts. And this idea of not believing everything that you're thinking. See, I want to talk to you about this book that I've been reading called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And I'm glad you're here with me today because in our episode yesterday, we looked at the nature of thought and the illusion of how thoughts give us control and how overthinking creates unnecessary stress and suffering. And today we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to explore how your very identity, who you believe you are, is actually shaped by your thoughts. And, how your belief systems that you hold, often unconsciously, as we talk about all the time, they can either propel you forward or keep you stuck. And for entrepreneurs, this is pretty critical because how you see yourself is going to directly determine what you attempt to do, how you act, what you move forward with, what you avoid, and how you respond to challenges. And so today, what I want to do is I want to cover a couple of ideas. I want to cover these ideas I learned in the book about the self as a thought, like who you are. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about the trap of your belief systems and how they're holding you back and what you can do there. And finally, breaking free from all those limiting identities, or as we hear Tony Robbins and many others talk about all the time, your limiting beliefs. And there's a couple of really good ideas, theories, and angles that this book have that really help to shape this awareness that I've had recently and that I think many have had, that your thoughts are really not just the things that create your life, but they're the things that are holding you back quite a bit. So let's jump into it real quick. The first thing I want to talk to you about is really this idea that you are made up of what you think you are. And Joseph Newton, who wrote the book, he makes a pretty powerful point that the self we identify with, the voice in our head, the mental picture of who we are, is not who we really are. It's a construct. It's a story shaped by our thoughts. And as entrepreneurs, this often looks like tying your self-worth directly to your business performance. Maybe you've experienced that before. When sales are high, you feel just really valuable when things are going well. But when things are tough, you feel like you're a failure. And this roller coaster isn't based on reality at all, but on the thoughts that I'm my business or that my worth equals my success. It's why I wrote that article a while back, Success versus Failure, and which one that you relate to. But here's the truth. You're not your business. You're not your level of success. You're not the revenue numbers that you're experiencing. You're not even your past track record. Those are just past accomplishments. You're the one who is aware of those experiences. You're not defined by them. And when you realize this, failure becomes feedback. Let me say that again. When you realize that you're not defined by your experiences, then you realize that failure is just feedback rather than a personal identity crisis. And you stop riding those emotional highs and lows and you start leading from a stable sense of self, a stable sense of self. And it is really important that you learn to do that. Once you do that, there's so many changes that happen in your life. So now let's talk a little bit about this trap that I think we face with our belief systems because our beliefs are simply just repeated thoughts we've accepted as truth. Think about that for a minute. Your beliefs that you have, the things that you believe to be true, are just repeated thoughts that you've accepted as truth. But when those beliefs are limiting, they create invisible walls around our potential. And there's so many examples of this for entrepreneurs. Things like, I'm not ready yet, or I need more resources before I can start, or I don't have the right connections, or I'm not confident, or I'm not really good enough compared to everyone else in my field. I face this all the time with clients that I have, with people that I work with. But notice how each of these things is not fact. They're just a thought disguise that we've convinced ourselves is reality. And the more we repeat it, the more we tell ourselves that, the more we think it, the more it solidifies it into our belief system. All of those things that I just mentioned, belief and confidence and self-worth or readiness, they're just not real. And in the book, the author argues that most of our suffering comes from clinging to beliefs we never stopped to question. Think about that. When you think something, you believe something, if beliefs are just thoughts, then you can challenge them. You can rewrite them. You can let go of them entirely if you want. But as entrepreneurs, the difference between a breakthrough and a breakdown is often just the belief that we're holding on to, that we're not willing to give up. And this is why I'm bringing this whole topic up, because thoughts are definitely the problem a lot of times. And even though you might believe your thoughts create your life, sometimes we don't stop to realize the trap that they're creating for us, this false illusion of control or this lack of confidence or these belief systems that we're putting inside ourselves. And so the last thing I want to talk to you about today is, here's the good news. You don't have to fix or replace every limiting belief. The real freedom comes just when you recognize that identity itself is thought-based. Think about that for a minute. It's not about working through all your limiting beliefs and all your problems. You become very empowered the minute you recognize that identity itself is thought-based. So when you stop clinging to thoughts like I'm not capable, or I'm not that kind of person, or that's not how I do it, or whatever it is, you realize that those are not true thoughts. They're just temporary stories. And when you stop identifying so strongly with them, they lose their power over you. Imagine leading a company without constantly questioning your worth. Imagine approaching failure not as a reflection of who you are, but as just feedback that helps you grow. That's the mindset that allows entrepreneurs to scale, to innovate, to persist when other people quit, because they recognize that their thoughts are not going to limit them. They're just thoughts. And so to recap today, we have to remind ourselves that the whole identity of ourself is just a thought. You're not your business. You're not your success. You're not your failure. Your identity itself is just a thought. So beliefs are repeated thoughts. And if you accept them without questioning them, they're going to hold you back. And most importantly, that your freedom comes from detaching yourself. When you stop equating your identity with your thoughts, that's when you really open up the door to possibilities. And that's what I wanted to remind you of today when we talk through this. It's the mental framework that we build around ourselves that makes a difference. So here's the thing you need to think about today. What belief about yourself or your business might actually just be a thought that you've mistaken for true? What belief about yourself or your business that you have in you know what it is in your mind right now. What belief do you actually have that is just a thought that you've mistaken for a truth? Think about that today. And then in our episode tomorrow, I'm going to wrap up this whole couple of days we're doing. I'm going to explore a little bit about how letting go of your thoughts can lead you to your true clarity, your creativity, and your flow as a successful entrepreneur. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow. I look forward to talking with you then. Do me a favor, share this episode. I don't really do any ads on the show, but I would love to have you share this episode if you wouldn't mind. And then also hit me up on the Daily Mastermind. Also in the show notes, I usually put my email address. So let me know what you're working on. I love to respond to our listeners. and also celebrate the wins that you have. So I look forward to talking with you more tomorrow about clarity and flow. Have an amazing day.